When I asked James why he made a family card for his in-laws, he laughed and said, "They're my family, so they should have one, right? You got a problem with that?" He added, "If you knew who helped you when you were alone, you wouldn't talk like that, would you?" His confident tone surprised me. Was James always like this? He asked. "If you're grateful, you should do more for my family. Then you'll be part of it. Until then, you're like you're on a trial." I never heard of a trial in marriage before. James explained. I was silent. "It means you're not fully part of the family yet. If you don't like it, you can leave any time. For now, our family is just the six of us." I was shocked. So I canceled our shared credit cards and moved out right away. "Hi, I'm Olivia Cook, and I'm 30 years old. I draw pictures for a living, working from home as a freelancer. Before that, I used to design stuff for a big ad company, but I started doing my own thing about 5 years ago when I got married. My folks passed away in a crash when I was little, so my grandparents raised me. But I moved back to my parents' old place in the city center for college, and I've been there ever since. I met my hubby James at this Italian joint where he worked. It was a cozy spot with good food at decent prices, so me and my work buddies went there a lot. James, the charming waiter, caught everyone's eye, including mine. He was quite the looker. The manager even joked that some folks came just to see him, and I totally got why. Can't deny, I was a bit of a fan myself. He had this cool vibe that really stood out. We grew closer pretty fast, and before we knew it, folks were calling us a couple. Surprisingly, we ended up tying the knot. I don't remember much from that time. It's like I was in a bit of a fog. Next thing I knew, I was married to James, my husband. But I did love him, and I was genuinely happy about getting married. I left my job at the design company on good terms and started freelancing. James stuck with his gig at the Italian joint, working odd hours, sometimes late into the night. It got tough to juggle work, so I decided to go solo, something I'd always wanted to do. That sounds smart, Olivia. It'll be easier for you, and it's great to keep doing what you love. James backed me up. And that's how we kicked off our married life. We weren't into big flashy stuff, so we skipped the whole wedding hoopla and just signed the papers. Our families met briefly, and that was that. James went to work, and I held down the fort at home, managing chores and freelancing. Our schedules were all over the place, but we made it a point to have meals together whenever we could. It was simple, but it made us happy. I thought, yep, marriage is pretty sweet. About a year into our marriage, things took a turn for the worse. My family wants to visit. Is that cool? James asked one day. Sure, I replied. I was actually looking forward to it. I'd only had a brief encounter with James's family before, so I figured this would be a good chance to bond with them. Having lost my own parents early on, I always admired James's big family, but when they arrived, 5 of them, I was left stunned. Hey, which room's mine? His sister blurted out as soon as they stepped in. She's 35, 3 years older than both James and me, and works at a local store. Her abruptness caught me off guard. She seemed so different from the polite person I'd met before. James's 22-year-old sister was there too, but she stayed quiet, barely saying a word, just like when we first met. Following James's sister's hurried lead, I showed them to the guest room, and James's parents to my parents' old room, the only one in Japanese style. I thought it'd suit them best. Once they settled into their rooms, James's sister declared, "Well, since we're all under the same roof now, you better start treating our family right." I was puzzled by her words, but when I turned to James for clarification, he simply chuckled in a way I'd never heard before. Turns out, they'd given up their place and moved in here without telling me, he explained. Sorry, our family home had to be vacated suddenly, and they had nowhere else to go. I wish he'd informed me earlier. I had assumed it was just for a day or two, not a long. James's family didn't hold back. From the moment they moved in, all 4 of them expected me to handle everything while they did nothing, saying whatever they pleased. They made no effort to find jobs or a place of their own. When I asked about their employment, I got yet another surprise. "Oh, I quit that awful job at the supermarket," his sister confessed. She was working, but it turned out to be just a part-time gig. I'd assumed she had a full-time job given her age, but she admitted she hadn't held a steady job since high school. James's parents also had part-time jobs they gave up before moving in, and his other sister, well, she was unemployed. She claimed to be a student, but that wasn't true. "Why should I work when I'm part of a well-off family now?" she reasoned. When I asked who she was referring to, I received another startling response. You obviously. You received a hefty settlement and insurance payout after your parents' accident, and you don't even have a mortgage on this place. You can live comfortably without having to work, James's sister remarked, chuckling. I voiced my concerns to James when he returned home, but he erupted in a manner I'd never witnessed before. Everyone's exhausted from being suddenly uprooted. Give them some time to recuperate. Or do you want to kick out my family, Olivia? I was stunned into silence. Then, abruptly, James softened his tone. I'm sorry for yelling. It's been a tough day for me too. Can you please try to be a bit more understanding? Looking back, James was adept at manipulating situations with a blend of kindness and severity. But in that moment, I failed to see it, agreeing to endure a bit longer. The situation with James's family grew more oppressive. They treated me like a servant at home and demanded money whenever they went out. We can't even look for jobs without some cash, can we? It's only fair, but if we can't find work, we'll just keep staying here, they reasoned. Reluctantly, I handed over some money, which they claimed to have used up without any luck in the job hunt. I suspected they never even bothered to search, but pointing that out would only lead to accusations without proof. And then James's entire family would lay blame on me for hours. Sharing my concerns with James didn't solve anything. Everyone's feeling frustrated about not finding jobs. Sorry, just bear with it a little longer. I'll have a talk with them, James would say, attempting to smooth things over. But as time passed, I felt like speaking up was futile. However, the frequency of their money requests gradually decreased, perhaps because James had a word with them. So the issue seemed to resolve itself. Of course, the money I had given them was never returned. Then, after about 2 months of enduring the situation, I noticed something alarming. Why is the credit card bill so high? Could it be unauthorized charges? Quickly checking the statement, I found that all the expenses were made with family credit cards. The purchases ranged from food and drinks to books, games, and even luxury brand bags and clothing. Each purchase was assigned a number from 1 to 6, indicating that 6 family credit cards had been issued. These credit cards were under my name, with James using the family cards. It seems like you'd handle this better, and it's easier to manage payments, right? Can I entrust it to you? He had asked, and I ended up taking charge of them. However, it turned out these family cards had been issued without my knowledge. James's family stopped requesting money because they could now make credit card payments and withdraw cash. When I confronted James about why he made family cards for his in-laws without consulting me, he chuckled and replied, well, you complain when they say they're broke, so what else could I do? Plus, you know who supported you when you were alone, right? Can you really speak like that to the important family of your benefactor? His bold tone left me speechless, unlike anything I'd heard before. Was James always like this? If you're thankful, you should do more for my family. Then I'll accept you as part of the family too. Until then, think of it like you're still in a trial period, he continued. I'd never heard of a trial period in marriage before. Seeing my silence, James pushed on. This means you're not officially part of the family yet. If you're not okay with it, you're free to leave anytime. Right now, it's just the 5 of us in our family. Useless freeloaders. Leave, he concluded. That's when I realized James's true character. I felt like all the color drained from my face. Stunned, I contemplated divorcing James. In fact, I began questioning why I even married him in the first place. At first, I was drawn to him simply because he was attractive, like many other women. I was infatuated with his looks without any real reason. Then, on one occasion when I went to the restroom, James approached me. You seem different, Olivia. Kind of mysterious. Sorry, I shouldn't say that to a customer, he said. I was taken aback but intrigued, and I found myself paying more attention to him over time. Maybe that was his strategy to make me like him. Looking back calmly, it all adds up. I remember once a colleague joked that I was a wealthy lady living alone in a condo, and it was after that James started chatting with me, perhaps because he was interested in my wealth and condo. Honestly, James wasn't exactly my type, to put it nicely. He was more modern, if I'm being blunt. He seemed a bit superficial. I preferred mature men who spoke softly and seriously. Yet, somehow, I ended up falling for James. I always found that perplexing, considering he was the typical handsome guy who could easily charm a woman, especially someone like me, who was new to the working world and not accustomed to men. I fell for his tricks and ended up marrying him. Thinking about it now left me feeling frustrated and ashamed. I wanted to lash out and break things around the house, but I knew better than to act on that impulse. Instead, I resolved to seek revenge. To accomplish that, I had to endure this situation a while longer, much like James manipulated me. My plan was to gain control over his entire family. The condo we lived in was purchased by my father with a mortgage shortly after I was born. It wasn't very costly back then, but with the rapid development of the area and the addition of a new shopping center nearby, it's now considered a luxury residence. My parents, hopeful for more children, invested in a spacious condo. That's why there's enough space, even with James's family moving in. However, despite its ample size, having James's family around proved to be a nuisance for me, especially while working from home. I endured it solely for the sake of revenge. As James's sister pointed out, there's no mortgage payment for this condo. When I was 4, both of my parents tragically died in a car accident. They were returning from my paternal grandfather's funeral when they collided with a speeding car on the freeway. I was supposed to accompany them that day, but I had caught the flu that was circulating and had a high fever. Consequently, my maternal grandparents came to the condo where we resided with my parents to care for me, leaving me as the sole survivor. The mortgage payments were covered by the group credit life insurance, so the only housing costs I incurred were the management fees and property taxes. Upon seeing the amount, James proposed contributing just a bit more than that to our household expenses. Since there's no mortgage, if I pitch in that much, we should be able to manage with Olivia's income, right? We'll each use our own earnings for personal expenses. Sounds fair, doesn't it? He suggested. I agreed, thinking perhaps he had a point. Until then, I had been solely responsible for all expenses, so I believed his contribution would alleviate some of my burden. Looking back, it was naive of me, but at the time, I was blinded by my love for James and simply went along with whatever he proposed. James likely sees himself as the head of the household and the one providing for me, which is why he can so casually refer to me as a parasite. However, the reality was starkly different. I was the one footing most of the bills, covering expenses like utilities, groceries, social outings, and entertainment. Now, with 5 additional dependents in the household, managing with just my income was becoming impossible. I was eager to rid myself of this burden as soon as possible, but I feigned ignorance and endured it. Gritting my teeth, I watched as James's family freely indulged in shopping sprees, reminding myself that I would have the last laugh. Then, 5 months after making the decision to divorce, the moment to take action finally arrived. I'm exhausted. It's time to make a choice. It's either me or your family, I told James, presenting him with an ultimatum. He was taken aback, but I pressed on without hesitation. None of your family members lift a finger to help around the house. They just dump all their chores on me. You know I work from home. I'm not idly passing the time. Yet they treat me like a freeloader and belittle me, claiming you're the one supporting me. I've had enough. I cried as I confronted James. His response was a smirk. Then you should leave. Didn't I warn you before? You're not truly part of this family yet. Giving up now means you haven't earned your place in it, he retorted. I feigned shock as I looked at him. What's surprising? If you can't tolerate my family, then it's you who must leave. And since I'm not to blame, I'll take this apartment as alimony and I'll claim half of your savings as part of the property settlement. Ah, so that was his scheme all along. That's why his entire family had been hounding me, attempting to drive me away. I had suspected it, but hearing it articulated so plainly still came as a shock. It was someone I had once loved and married, but thanks to this revelation, I made up my mind. Fine, I declared, resolved to divorce James. But this condo belongs to me, and I'm not at fault either. What did you say? The grounds for the divorce are your family moving in without my consent and your family disrespecting me, I asserted firmly to James. He'd appeared taken aback by my outright rejection of his terms, not expecting such defiance. It was understandable, as I had always acquiesced to his demands since our marriage. Recalling those moments filled me with anger. I can't stand another moment with you all, so I'll leave now. But be prepared to vacate as well. This is ridiculous. This is our home. We won't leave. Ever heard of tenant rights? You can't just evict us from our own home, James shouted. Ignoring his protests, I left the house and sought refuge at my grandparents' home. I divulged everything to them and requested shelter until matters were resolved. My grandparents were appalled by what I had endured and scolded me for not seeking their counsel sooner. With tears in their eyes, they embraced me. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I know I worried you, but I'll be all right now," I reassured them, forcing a laugh through my tears. The day after I left the apartment, James wasted no time in contacting me. "What's all this about? What mail are you talking about?" He inquired about the certified letter. I was impressed by how swiftly things were progressing. I had entrusted the divorce proceedings to a lawyer, and upon informing them of my departure yesterday, they had arranged for everything to be handled promptly today. "I'm not paying any alimony, and I'm not leaving the condo," James asserted. However, legally he was obligated to pay, and he had no right to remain in the apartment. "What do you mean? The condo is jointly owned since we're married. If that's your stance, then compensate me for half its value to buy out my share," he insisted, making an absurd claim. "Continuing this discussion is futile. Please communicate through my lawyer from now on," I stated firmly, ending the call. I anticipated he would likely call again the next day, but I had no desire to engage in further conversation that day. As expected, he rang me the following morning. "What's all this about?" He repeated the same line as the day before, displaying a lack of originality. "What mail are you referring to? The card's not working." "What did you do?" "What I did was cancel it. That card belonged to me, and you were merely an authorized user on the family card, remember?" Indeed, before leaving the house, I had transferred all the accounts linked to that card to another one and terminated it. Naturally, the family cards would cease to function when I canceled mine. "I was the one covering the expenses," I explained. "Yes, you covered the management fees and property taxes for the first 4 months only. It's not substantial, but I can deduct that from the alimony if you prefer," I mocked him. I heard some muffled shouting from the other end of the line. That's right, James had only paid the agreed amount for just 4 months. He had concocted various excuses about work and other matters, always finding a pretext to postpone payment. Then he abruptly ceased all payments. If he forgot and assumed he was still paying, that's quite a lapse in memory, but I didn't concern myself with it anymore. He's someone I'm severing ties with. His memory holds no significance to me. That's the situation, so please reimburse your share of the living expenses I've been covering. I've meticulously documented our household expenditures, which I'll utilize as evidence to equitably divide our savings. It's marital property, he insisted. "Yes, understood. Let's divide it accordingly," I acquiesced. He concluded the call with a reminder not to overlook it. A few days later, he called again with the same inquiry. I realized they were not only deficient in memory but also in vocabulary. "What do you mean by the division of shared property? Why is it 0? You must be swimming in cash from your parents' insurance and alimony," he alleged. "Ah, so that's what they assumed." I patiently clarified that my pre-marriage savings were not part of the shared property, and since we had accumulated no savings during our marriage, it naturally amounted to 0. Don't accuse me of deceit. If you doubt my honesty, why not seek advice? Henceforth, kindly communicate through my attorney. I won't engage in direct communication with you any longer. Farewell, I declared, then terminated the call and blocked James' number. 1 month after my departure, James and his family finally vacated the apartment, not due to a change of heart, but because they could no longer sustain their lifestyle. Predictably, James's income alone couldn't support a family of 5. Accustomed to lavish spending with my card, asking them to tighten their belts was out of the question. I had intentionally allowed them to use the card for this purpose, knowing it would lead to this outcome. His family began badgering James for shopping funds, and when he refused, they resorted to pilfering from his wallet. Even in his anger, they blamed him for my departure. To compound their troubles, the utilities, electricity, gas, and water were all disconnected. Of course, I had arranged for this since I had no intention of residing there. James attempted to have the utilities swiftly reinstated by phone. But since the house was in my name, no one else could restore them if the owner had ordered their termination. During the scorching summer and early autumn, his family struggled to endure the sweltering heat and eventually vacated the condo. Their destination, I neither knew nor cared. James endeavored to persist until the end, but he ultimately capitulated due to the absence of electricity and the inability to bathe. The divorce proceedings progressed more rapidly than anticipated, not because James had a change of heart, but because of his blunders. He betrayed our marriage by pursuing someone else, perhaps assuming he could swiftly remove me from the picture. He boasted about owning a luxurious downtown apartment, using it as bait to attract younger women. It's astonishing he engaged in such behavior with his family present, but it wasn't out of character for him, so they turned a blind eye. Prior to departing, I had discreetly installed cameras throughout the house, capturing all the evidence. Perhaps he underestimated me, but his disrespect was undeniable. He brought his family into my home without consent, racked up expenses on a family card, and left me with a bill, ousted me, and engaged in infidelity. I demanded significant compensation and alimony for these transgressions. When James saw the amount, he visibly paled and begged desperately for reconciliation. However, I harbored no such intentions. Aware of his inability to pay, I pressured him to borrow as much as possible from his company and seized whatever assets I could. When I threatened legal action for fraudulent use of the family card, he reluctantly agreed to my terms. I can only hope he makes diligent efforts to repay his debts. The divorce is now finalized, and I am currently residing at my grandparents' place. I haven't decided what to do with the apartment yet. While it held sentimental value as an inheritance from my late parents, given the circumstances and lack of memories associated with it, I may opt to sell it. On the professional front, my career as an illustrator is flourishing. I may soon live independently again. But for now, I'm content working from my grandparents' home. I'll continue to rely on their support for a little while longer before forging ahead with renewed determination. In the future, I'll be more discerning in choosing a partner, prioritizing qualities beyond mere attractiveness. My hope is to find a life partner with whom I can share my journey. Mom chose my toxic stepsister over me and kicked me out, but years later, I'm engaged and his company dropped her husband's contract as a client, and now she's blaming me. I'm a 26-year-old woman engaged to my fiancé, Jeff, who's also 26. We met on a dating app 4 years ago and have been together ever since. Jeff is my soulmate, the one person who has never disappointed me. My life hasn't been easy. My parents split up when I was only 2 years old, and my dad never really bothered with me afterward. While he did pay child support, he never showed much interest in being a part of my life. My mom, who's 48, wasn't exactly a great mom either. She was more focused on her own interests than on raising me. I basically grew up with nannies and babysitters. When I got older, I realized my mom was more into her social life than being a parent. She was a freelance artist and made enough money, thanks to child support, to not worry about me much. Honestly, I think if it wasn't for the money, she would have kicked me out long ago. She never seemed attached to me and mostly just waited for me to grow up and leave her alone. When I was about 13, my mom started dating Matt, who was 50. He had a daughter my age named Jess. When they first came over, my mom stressed how important it was for me to behave well. It struck me because she'd never cared about that with my previous boyfriends. Normally, she just let me know guests were coming, and I'd hide in my room until they left. But this time, I sensed my mom was serious about this guy, Matt. Otherwise, she wouldn't have bothered about my behavior. It made me realize she wouldn't have even noticed me if she wasn't into him. When I first met Matt and Jess, they seemed nice, and the introduction went smoothly. Little did I know what was coming next. Matt started coming over more often, and it felt like they were practically moving in together. It didn't bother me much as long as they left me alone. I was fine with it. They became a regular presence, with Jess visiting occasionally as she split her time between her mom's and our place. At first, they either treated me okay or just ignored me, which suited me fine since I wasn't too fond of any of them. I didn't care much about my mom, so caring about people connected to her was hard. All I wanted was some peace and quiet, which I had for a while. Then they decided to move in together permanently. I wouldn't have minded, but my mom said I had to share my room with my stepsister now. I refused. That room was mine, always had been, and it was the only place I felt at peace. In that house, I had my own little corner, and I wasn't about to give up my freedom by sharing my room with someone I barely knew. When I told my mom I wasn't going to share, we had a huge argument. She threatened to kick me out if I didn't obey. I was only 14, but I knew my rights. I felt like I had to stand my ground because my mom wasn't exactly trustworthy. Plus, it just made sense. I knew she couldn't kick me out until I was an adult without getting in trouble. So I called her bluff and told her she couldn't do it. She was frustrated but had to give in and let me keep my room. Instead, she decided to transform the basement into Jess's room. It wasn't as nice as mine, but my mom worked hard to make it comfortable. When she was finished, it looked just as good as any other room in the house. So I didn't see why it was such a big deal. But that's when Jess started disliking me, and I think it had something to do with my mom announcing to everyone during the house tour that Jess had to live in the basement because I wasn't willing to share my room. I couldn't understand why she'd make such a public announcement. I still can't figure out why she did it. Maybe she wanted to make me feel guilty by announcing it in front of Jess, but it just made me uncomfortable. Or perhaps she enjoys drama and wanted Jess to know I refused to share my room, which caused tension between us because Jess didn't seem like the type to let things slide. My mom's prediction was right. Jess didn't let it go, and from that day on, she treated me like the enemy. Even though she spent half the month with her mom, the days she was with us were unbearable. She was constantly mean to me and made hurtful remarks right to my face. Let me paint a picture of the things she would say. Once, she suggested that my dad left my mom because of me, and then she laughed as if it were a joke. She'd also poke fun at my looks, especially because I was a bit chubby back then. At school, she had a group of mean girls, and she never missed a chance to join in on bullying me with them. Before, she and her friends would just ignore me, and I preferred that. We were never friends, but that was better than being enemies. What hurt the most was that I hadn't even done anything to her. She was just upset that I didn't want to share my room with her. It seemed like such a silly reason for her to hate me so much and make my life miserable. My room was my sanctuary, especially with a mom like mine. Who could blame me for wanting my own space? Besides, if any of them had bothered to get to know me, I might have considered sharing. But she was a stranger, and I wasn't comfortable sacrificing my privacy for her. I never complained to my mom or Matt because they knew and didn't care. They'd turn a blind eye to my struggles because I wasn't important to them. So I had to endure it and let her walk all over me. I tried to stand up for myself sometimes, but it only made things worse. Our parents would intervene, and I'd end up getting grounded because, well, they favored her. She'd cry a bit and get away with it, but I couldn't fake tears like her, and I wasn't that manipulative. So I'd be the one punished while she got off easy, and I had to deal with it. Growing up there was awful, and I despised my life. When I was finally kicked out around my 18th birthday, I felt more relieved than anything else. I had endured my family's chaos for years, and it only got worse over time. Jess remained a nightmare to deal with, and our parents blindly supported her, no matter what. Over 4 years, she turned our entire high school year against me, and I was left with only a few friends who still talked to me. Everyone else despised me just because she did, and that was reason enough. It took a toll on my mental health, and I struggled in every aspect. I gained a lot of weight from binge eating, which worsened my appearance. I was overweight, battling acne, and my hair was a mess. On top of that, my grades were suffering, so not only did I look bad, but I also seemed unintelligent to everyone else. I had nothing going for me and hit rock bottom. Home life wasn't any better with Jess and my parents. My mom became increasingly unbearable, constantly comparing me to Jess, despite knowing she made my life worse. Things were bad before my mom married Matt and they moved in together, but they weren't this bad. It was disheartening that my mother didn't care about me before, but after she married Matt, things went from bad to worse. She went from being indifferent to actively making me feel terrible about myself. It felt like I was living with mean girls at home too. It was clear to me that Jess was the daughter my mother truly wanted, and I was just dealt the wrong cards. Both of them wished I'd disappear, and honestly, I wanted the same thing. My mother and Jess despised me, and Matt didn't care. With no other family besides my mother and no contact with my grandparents, I had nowhere to turn. I didn't feel right asking friends for help, so I toughed it out at home to at least have a roof over my head and food until I turned 18. But then, a couple of weeks before my birthday, something happened, and I was kicked out that same day. It was a weekend etched in my memory like it happened yesterday, one of the most traumatic and stressful days of my life. We had recently graduated, and Jess had started hanging out with a new, older crowd. She befriended someone whose brother, in his last year of college, became her boyfriend. They'd socialize with his friends, who were all older than us. I was aware of their activities but didn't dare tell my parents, fearing it would backfire. So I kept quiet about Jess drinking and likely smoking weed. I had no interest in those things. I was already struggling with weight and grades. I didn't need more trouble. But that day, I must have left my room unlocked before showering. Suddenly, I heard banging on the bathroom door, and my mother was screaming at me to come out immediately. I quickly dressed and rushed out to see what was going on. When I emerged from the shower, my mother, Matt, and Jess were waiting in my room, wearing serious expressions. My mother produced a bunch of empty beer bottles from under my bed, and even more damning, a large plastic baggie filled with what looked like grams of weed. I knew it wasn't mine, and so did Jess. But my parents didn't know that. Somehow, she must have planted it while I was away and then told my mom. They began yelling at me, accusing me of being a terrible person. It wasn't just about the alcohol and drugs. My mom also criticized me for being a disappointment and for eating all the food. She called me a waste, convinced I'd never amount to anything and would just keep living with them, wasting their money. I repeatedly tried to explain that none of it was mine, and I didn't know how it ended up in my room, but she wouldn't believe me. She got furious when I suggested Jess might have planted it to frame me. She yelled that I was always jealous of her and would never be as good at anything, which is why I was trying to shift the blame. I was in tears, but she didn't seem to care and kept yelling. Eventually, she stopped and told me I had to leave. I was baffled and asked her where I was supposed to go. She said she didn't care as long as I left because she was fed up with me. When I insisted I wasn't leaving, she threatened to call the cops and warned that at almost 18, they'd take drug charges seriously. She didn't want an addict in her house draining her resources. She said I had to fend for myself now because she was done pretending to be a happy family with someone who didn't deserve it. I begged her not to kick me out, knowing I had nowhere else to go and no money of my own. But she remained unmoved. She gave me until the end of the day to leave, or she'd call the police herself. I was stunned by her heartlessness, and even more so by the fact that neither Matt nor Jess objected. They acted like everything was normal. After a lot of tears and pleading, I reluctantly started packing my things. Between facing drug charges and living on the streets, I preferred the latter. By evening, I was finished packing. As I left the house, nobody said goodbye, and I didn't look back either. I spent a couple of hours at the park, but it got too cold, so I decided to go to a friend's place for the night, hoping they'd let me stay. I went to my best friend Amy's house and asked if I could stay for a few days. She already knew about my parents, so I didn't have to explain much. I shared the events of the day with her, and she was shocked. She suggested her parents could help if I let them. I'd always kept the way my parents treated me secret, even from Amy's parents, unsure if anyone would believe me. I felt uncomfortable sharing such personal details of my life with others. That day, Amy insisted I tell her parents everything, and they were just as appalled as she was. They called my mother, trying to reason with her, but she was rude and unyielding. Realizing they couldn't change her mind, they did something incredibly kind. They offered to let me live with them for as long as I needed, promising their full support. They were well off, so money wasn't an issue, and Amy was willing to share her room with me because she cared about me. I spent the next few years living with them, attending community college since it was the only place I could get into with my grades. I worked and saved money to find my own place, but Amy's parents never pressured me to leave. They made sure I felt comfortable and supported. About 3 years ago, I finally saved enough to move out. I was proud of myself and deeply grateful to Amy and her parents. I couldn't have done it without them. Even on the day I moved out, Amy's parents helped me settle into my new place and assured me I was always welcome back to visit or even live with them again. It was a turning point in my life. By then, I had shed a lot of weight, improved my health, and felt much better overall. I was also earning enough to support myself and had spent a good amount of time working on myself. I decided to start dating because I eventually wanted to get married and needed to start looking. Before Jeff, I had met a few guys, but things never progressed far. When I met Jeff, everything clicked. I realized he was the one meant for me. He was funny, cute, and seemed genuinely interested in me. When we started dating, I didn't know he was wealthy or set to inherit his family's chain of restaurants. I just liked him for who he was. It was only after a few months that he shared his family background, and I learned about his future inheritance. Some might assume that learning about his wealth could alter things for me, but honestly, he remained the same person I knew all along. Knowing about his background didn't change my feelings, and I loved him just as deeply as before. After about a year of dating, we decided to move in together. and he introduced me to his family a few months prior. I got along well with everyone, and they all liked me. Everything seemed perfect, so when he proposed recently, saying yes was an easy decision. We've been engaged for 2 months now, and everything's been going wonderfully. Then, about 2 weeks ago, I received an email from Jess. We hadn't spoken in almost 8 years, and I hadn't heard from my family since I was kicked out. I was puzzled as to why she'd reach out now, especially to make amends. Enough time had passed, and neither of us seemed interested in fixing things. So when I read her email apologizing for everything and admitting she'd been awful, I was really confused. She confessed to orchestrating everything in my room because she simply loathed me for no apparent reason. It was baffling why she would confess to it years later, and I sensed something wasn't right about the situation. The timing was suspicious, especially since I had just gotten engaged, and she likely knew about it from social media or word of mouth. Given that we attended the same high school, I decided to investigate further. After some digging, I discovered that Jess's husband owned the business that supplied plastic containers for takeaway orders to Jeff's restaurants. It was relatively easy for me to gather this information by creating a fake profile and stalking her online. Her husband's bio mentioned his line of work, which aligned with what I already knew about Jeff's business plans. I immediately informed Jeff about the connection. In the past few years, I've made a conscious effort to distance myself from my old life, avoiding following any family members online and asking friends not to update me on their news. So I had no idea that Jess had gotten married until I discovered her husband's connection to our business dealings. Upon learning this, Jeff and I decided to terminate our contract with him. The costs were high, and more significantly, I couldn't bring myself to engage with Jess again, even on a professional level. Jeff also mentioned that the quality of the products from Jess's husband had deteriorated over time, and they were already considering switching suppliers. So last week, a few days after I received that email from Jess, Jeff held a meeting with her husband and ended their contract. However, Jess seems to believe that I orchestrated this to seek revenge on her. She's been accusing me of this through emails and social media posts, despite our lack of contact for almost a decade. While I might harbor some resentment, it's not the driving force behind her husband losing our contract. A few days ago, she posted on social media stating that many clients had been dropping them lately, and this was the final blow. However, she insisted that our decision was fueled solely by spite and labeled it highly unprofessional. She even tagged our Facebook page, creating quite a messy situation. While I can't deny there was a personal aspect to our decision, she also mentioned in her post that she and her husband had been losing clients consistently. While I feel somewhat remorseful, especially considering her struggles, I believe our decision was based on both personal and professional factors. I feel a bit guilty for influencing my fiancé to sever ties with my estranged stepsister's husband, Ida. Update: Jeff consulted with his dad's lawyers, who agree that our actions were justified. We've decided to pursue legal action against them, demanding the removal of their defamatory posts and pressing charges. The truth is, the products we were receiving were overpriced and subpar, so naturally, we sought better options elsewhere. It's purely coincidental that I'm married to the owner of that business. Instead of improving their services, she chose to tarnish our reputation on social media. It's absurd that I even felt sympathy for her given everything she put me through. Your support has helped me see things clearly, so thank you all for your comments and encouragement. Update 2. Jeff and his father initiated a defamation lawsuit against Jess and her husband a few days ago. We're scheduled to meet with a court-appointed mediator soon. Meanwhile, my mother has once again taken it upon herself to defend her stepdaughter. It feels like a high school drama, but thankfully, I can ignore them now without worrying about my living situation. Despite my mother's attempts to provoke me, I've chosen to block her and focus on my own life. I refuse to let their negativity affect me. I'm engaged to the man of my dreams, and I'm about to start a new chapter in my life. I have no room for them or their drama. Update 3. Quick update for you all. We won the defamation lawsuit thanks to the relentless efforts of my father-in-law's lawyers. They were able to swiftly resolve the matter, holding Jess and her husband accountable for their actions. Hopefully, this will prompt them to prioritize their business and meet their clients' expectations. With the legal battle behind us, Jeff and I can now shift our focus entirely to planning our wedding. I'm beyond excited to marry Jeff, my soulmate. I've waited so long to find someone like him, and now that I have, I'm holding on tight.
Hello everyone, I'm Rose, And let me share my story with you. My mother-in-law, Sherry, used to be a different person, not the vain and shallow woman she is now. This change occurred later in her life, or at least that's what my husband Dylan believes. Growing up, Dylan and Sherry didn't have a lavish lifestyle. They led a modest life together after Dylan's father passed away when he was just 4 years old. Sherry took on the role of the breadwinner, and they've lived a simple life until Dylan secured a great job after college. Dylan is a remarkable and kind man, not just because he's my husband. He earned a full scholarship to medical school and became a doctor. Despite his success, Dylan remained humble. However, Sherry's life took a turn for the luxurious. Now, let me clarify. I don't have a job for reasons I'll discuss later, but that doesn't mean I am poor or dependent on others. Unfortunately, Sherry got the wrong impression of me when we first met. Whether it was my clothes or mannerisms, something repelled her. On our first encounter, she said, "Dylan, is this the girl you've been raving about? She's so plain and average. Why would you choose someone like her? Does she even have a job?" My name is Rose, and no, I don't have a job. However, Sherry assumed that meant I was planning to trap her son and drain his money. She labeled me as a gold digger and a parasite, making baseless assumptions about my character. Dallin defended me, but the argument escalated and we decided to leave. During our journey home, Dylan apologized for his mother's behavior, acknowledging that she had crossed a line. He reassured me, saying his mom no longer knows how to act like a sane person. Although her words hurt, Dylan asked me not to mind them. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that being comfortable around Sherry might be a challenge. After all, she's the only parent Dylan has left. I decided to step back. We don't have much extended family, and completely cutting her off isn't feasible. I won't push you to be friends with her, but can you at least be civil around her? I can act respectfully towards your mom, Dylan, but I doubt she'll reciprocate. Don't worry, Rose. I'll keep her in check. If she crosses the line, we can consider reducing contact. I love my mom, but I love you too. I won't let her harass you for no reason. I was skeptical about my relationship with Sherry. Dylan assured me he'd stand up for me, but I still felt uneasy. Dylan and I got married 3 years after we started dating. We had a court wedding due to financial constraints. Dylan was sending Sherry a lot of money every month for emergencies. Even after we married, he continued this practice, straining our finances. I didn't stop him. I believed he had the right to help his mom. However, Sherry became a problem. She regularly spoke ill of me and gossiped with her friends, spreading rumors about me being a gold digger. I ignored it initially, but it started affecting my reputation. Despite Dylan's efforts, Sherry never treated me kindly. She believed I wasn't good enough for her son. Surprisingly, one day, Dylan told me that his mom wanted to invite me to a small party she was hosting. I was skeptical since she disliked me. Dylan assured me that she promised to improve and wanted me there. It seemed odd considering her recent financial struggles, but Dylan believed she managed somehow. I agreed to go, despite my concerns about her behavior. Dylan hoped his mom was making an effort, so I decided to keep an open mind. I truly wanted us to mend our relationship and become friends. I had serious doubts that Sherry would ever consider being friends with me, despite my willingness to be civil and make an effort for Dylan's sake. It seemed that Sherry had little regard for his happiness. Despite my skepticism, I decided to attend the party, eagerly waiting for Sherry to provide details. Sherry texted me the next day, and I assumed she was extending the invitation. However, her message took an unexpected turn. She started by mentioning the party at a 5-star hotel everyone had been raving about, promising her friends a great time. This excited her, and she planned to take 15 people. Curious, I asked if I was invited, given Dylan's assurance. To my surprise, Sherry responded with arrogance and disdain. She made it clear that I was not invited, emphasizing the exclusivity of the event due to her wealth, family status, and the supposed classiness of her friends. I was taken aback and confused, as Dylan had genuinely believed Sherry was extending an invitation. I expressed my assumption, only to be met with Sherry's condescending remarks, stating that I wouldn't understand the intricacies of planning such an event. I decided to maintain my dignity, acknowledging her message and clarifying that I wouldn't attend if I wasn't wanted. Sherry reiterated her stance, emphasizing her class and status, while I resisted the urge to respond with anger. Disappointed and hurt, I chose not to share this with Dylan. Instead, I patiently waited for the day of the party. Sherry, oblivious to the emotional impact of her actions, sent me a picture showcasing her and her friends in designer outfits, flaunting their status on social media. I refrained from responding, choosing to focus on my work and patiently await the unfolding of events. After about 3 hours, I received a call from my dad, and here's a confession for you all. My dad owns the hotel where Sherry was hosting her party. Sherry had no clue about this. 3 years ago, I inherited a substantial amount from my grandfather, which I invested in my dad's business. Now, I receive a share of the profits from the hotel and other family-owned businesses. Despite coming from a well-off family, I prefer not to broadcast it, and that's why Sherry was unaware of my background. She also had no idea about the high cost of the five-star hotel and its restaurant. Sherry let her friends order without checking the menu or prices, resulting in a hefty $2,000 bill. This turn of events was the perfect opportunity for revenge. My dad called me to inform me that Sherry was at the hotel, having amassed a $2,000 bill. She was now asking for a 50% discount, claiming she was short on cash. My dad sought my advice, as Sherry's party had been rude and entitled, upsetting the staff. As expected, I shared my frustration with my dad, recounting how Sherry had boasted about the party to mock me for not being invited. The irony was not lost on me, given that she couldn't even afford the party she was flaunting. My dad expressed his understanding of the situation and shared the challenges faced by his staff due to Sherry's behavior. I saw an opportunity for revenge and suggested making Sherry and her team wash the dishes, clean the entire kitchen and the floor, given their insulting behavior. I wanted to extend this revenge to include Sherry's team, who had also mistreated our staff. If Sherry tried anything foolish, my dad could call the cops on her. My dad laughed at the suggestion, giving it a big thumbs up. He even offered to share pictures of the event. It seemed like the perfect chance to turn the tables and teach Sherry a lesson about humility and respect. When it happened, I would have relished seeing Sherry face the consequences of her actions. My dad promised to follow my suggestion and hung up. An hour or so later, he sent me pictures of Sherry and her friends washing dishes and wiping the floor at our restaurants. Dad also shared that when Sherry saw him as the restaurant owner, she looked relieved. She began telling him that she knew the owner and they would get out of the situation. To her surprise, Dad instructed her to clean his restaurants. She was dumbstruck for a while, and when she started to protest, Dad reminded her that since she didn't consider me family, he didn't consider her family either. It was a hilarious turn of events, and though I wished I was there, I did get some good pictures. After a while, Dylan came home looking visibly upset. I could tell he had heard from Sherry about what happened, and I knew she must have given him a twisted account of the events. He approached me, questioning what he'd heard about my dad making his mom clean the restaurant dishes. I explained to Dylan that it was the usual norm for us in such situations. Sherry had gone to our restaurant, racked up a $2,000 bill, claimed she didn't have more than $1,000, harassed our staff, and her party had been a nightmare. I believe this punishment was fitting. Dylan seemed surprised and questioned who Sherry had taken with her and what they ordered. I informed him that she took 15 people, and they ordered a lot, especially the fancy items. He expressed disbelief, as Sherry had told him she was taking only 4 people and had invited me, but I declined. I clarified that things didn't happen that way, and I showed him the text messages from Sherry. Dylan requested the bills and asked me to show him the texts, wanting to understand the situation better. I showed Dylan all the texts, and my dad sent him the bills. I also presented some pictures to illustrate the scale of Sherry's party. Dallin grew extremely mad when he saw everything. He called Sherry, asking her what was wrong and why she hadn't told him the full story. Sherry claimed she only mentioned being short of cash, and I must have given him a different story to sabotage her. Dallin confronted her, pointing out that she declined my invitation and insulted me by saying I wasn't classy enough for her. Sherry tried to brush it off as a harmless joke, but Dylan wasn't buying it. He questioned her spending thousands of dollars taken from him on friends while insulting his wife. He called her out for her actions, stating that spending $2,000 on food and drink wasn't a small matter. Sherry was left trying to justify her actions, while Dylan expressed his disbelief at her behavior. I made a mistake by giving you money whenever you shared stories about needing it, Mom. Well, guess what? I'm not giving you any money again. But Dylan, you've been so supportive for so long. You can't just stop now. It was a one-time mistake. Dylan, why are you overreacting? No, Mom, I am not overreacting. This is not a one-time mistake. If you can't even consider my wife as family, I don't want anything to do with you. I always thought he would change your mind, but you never did. I'm not paying you to insult my wife and call her classless while she sacrifices a lot to support you. This ends now. Dylan didn't listen to Sherry anymore. He hung up on her and blocked her number. He also apologized profusely to me for being mad at me without knowing the full story. I forgave him because, well, he did stand up for me. We had a serious discussion about Sherry and jointly decided that she will no longer be in our lives for now. Yes, Dylan is now a wealthy man, but he knows to stay humble. He found Sherry's behavior completely unacceptable, especially because it was directed towards me. I agreed with the fact that it was very unfair to me, and I was all set to remove her from our life for good. In the next few days, Sherry reached peak madness. She realized that her own actions may have damaged her relationship with her son for good, sending her into a horrible panic. She showed up at our house and demanded to speak with Dylan. Slowly, her demands turned into begging after she was turned away from the door every time. Yes, Sherry worked and earned some money. However, it wasn't enough for the high-end lifestyle she had gotten used to all these years. Dylan had stopped giving her money entirely. Instead, he invested some of his funds into my dad's business to help him open new hotels and restaurants in the neighborhood. We do plan on expanding our hotel business to bigger cities, but we'll have to see what the future holds. Since Dylan stopped sending her funds, Sherry had to downgrade her lifestyle significantly. She was struggling to keep the rented condo with her own money and ultimately decided to end her lease. She has now shifted to a small one-bedroom apartment and doesn't have any money to spend on extras after all the bill payments. How do we know this? She emails us about it. Of course, she still downplays her behavior and acts like we are overreacting. Suffice it to say, she will be out of our lives for a while now. Just a month ago, I found out that I was pregnant. Dylan and I are overjoyed and busy planning everything before our baby comes. To be honest, I'm glad that my child won't be around shallow people like Sherry anymore. But if the time comes, I will make sure my dear mother-in-law doesn't get to fill my child's head with nonsense. For now, please wish us luck so that we can be good parents to a healthy child. My name is Melissa. I'm 26 years old and getting ready to have my baby at home. But there's a problem. My mother-in-law doesn't seem to like me much. She says mean things about me to my husband when she thinks I can't hear. She says I'm not nice, not helpful, don't make money, and have no good qualities. I wanted to tell her off, but I'm pregnant and don't want to make things worse. So I just try to ignore her negativity and focus on taking care of myself and the baby. I'm really excited to meet my baby soon. So while I'm waiting, I take walks and talk to my belly every day. It's a happy time for me. But then my mother-in-law shows up unexpectedly and stays for too long. She complains about everything, like the food and the baby's room. Finally, my baby is born safely, and even though things are busy, I enjoy raising her in my cheerful childhood home. I tell my husband that I'll be back at his place next weekend, but secretly, I wish I could stay home a little longer. I wonder how long I can rely on others, especially since my husband isn't interested in doing housework. I thought to myself. Holding my sleeping baby Lisa in my arms, I smiled at her. This is going to be your home, Lisa. We need to go back and make it cozy, I whispered. When I arrived at our house with lots of bags, I hoped someone would open the door for me when I rang the bell, but nobody did. I struggled to unlock the door and went inside, only to find nobody there. I had told my husband I'd be back by now. As I walked into the living room, I was shocked by what I saw. What? What happened here? The room was a complete mess, with stuff scattered everywhere. It wasn't just untidy. It looked like someone had deliberately made a mess. Was it a break-in? Terrified, I ran out of the house. Hello, police. I just got back from having my baby, and my house is a disaster, I said shakily into the phone, while my peacefully sleeping baby began to cry, adding to my panic. A neighbor passing by noticed our distress and kindly invited us to rest at their house. They helped me calm down from the shock and fear. After giving my daughter some milk, she fell back asleep. Soon, we heard police sirens, and I went back to my house with the neighbor by my side. The front door was still locked. I was too scared to go in after seeing the living room, so I hadn't checked the other rooms. When I explained this to the police, they commended me for being cautious. They explained that encountering a burglar can be dangerous, so it's safer to stay outside and wait for them to arrive. I hadn't thought about that in my rush, but the idea scared me now. As I finished explaining, a voice full of uncertainty spoke up. What's going on? Why are the police here? It was my mother-in-law. It's a bad situation, mother-in-law. Our house has been ransacked, and we suspect it was a burglary. The police are here to investigate, I explained before she could interrupt. I felt a sharp sting on my cheek as my mother-in-law slapped me hard. My vision blurred from the shock, and amidst the chaos of neighbors and police, I instinctively held my sore cheek. My mother-in-law's face was flushed red with anger as she yelled at me, accusing me of being shameless for calling the police about a burglary. I was stunned, unable to understand why she was so furious, especially with the pain in my cheek throbbing. A neighbor tried to intervene, explaining that calling the police was the right thing to do and it's their job to investigate, but she wouldn't listen. She went on to scold me for leaving my husband alone and going back to my parents' house during childbirth. She said I was useless if I wasn't at home doing housework. And now, she was upset that I had caused a scene by calling the police. Even though everyone around tried to reason with her and tell her it wasn't my fault, she wouldn't listen. As I tried to make sense of it all, I realized something strange. Despite our house possibly being burgled, she didn't seem concerned about any losses. And even though it was the first time she was meeting her grandchild, she didn't show any interest. Why? Everyone around me didn't seem to agree with what I was saying. That's not the point. How can you accuse me without even saying sorry? My mother-in-law completely ignored my question, sticking to her argument. Mom, what's happening? Brian, my husband, interrupted the argument, appearing quite calm. Brian, listen to this. It's awful. My mother-in-law's face lit up with delight at the sight of her beloved son. Melissa apparently called the police. Huh. Why? She's been going on about a burglary, but that's impossible. Brian, please tell her to stop being so ridiculous. My mother-in-law insisted. Is that true? Melissa, maybe you got it wrong about the burglary. It's bothering the neighbors, you know? And the police have other things to deal with, so let's send them away soon. Brian said, trying to calm things down. What? I was shocked, but for a different reason this time. Not only was my mother-in-law against me, but now my husband, Brian, seemed to be too. I couldn't believe he would say something like that. Wait, Brian, our house isn't just messy. The police are still investigating. We don't know for sure if it was a burglary yet, but something is definitely off about the state of the house. We're about to check if anything's missing and file a report. No, absolutely not. Brian interrupted me with a raised voice. But why? The conversation was becoming more confusing by the moment. I felt lost, and tears began to fill my eyes. I came back here, and nobody was here, and the room was a mess. I didn't know what happened, and I was scared. Unable to hold back my sobs, I found comfort in the embrace of a neighbor, their warmth making me cry even more. Yet in front of me, both my mother-in-law and husband seemed irritated and simply stared at me. Why? Why won't you understand? My heartache seemed to affect my daughter too, as she woke up crying. This only seemed to annoy my mother-in-law and husband even further. With the kindness of the neighbors and the concerned look of the police, I ended up spending the night at a neighbor's house. Stolen things? I don't know. Melissa's just overreacting. Let's go inside, my mother-in-law said, while my husband added, yeah, Melissa, calm down. They didn't seem to care about the mess and quickly went inside after the police finished their investigation. I didn't think he was like that, I thought, standing in front of the closed door, recalling my husband's words. My mom still treats me like a child, and it's annoying. I usually just go along with her to avoid conflict, but it's really a hassle. Despite his complaints, though, I couldn't stay outside forever. After apologizing repeatedly, I ended up spending the night at my neighbor's house. Mom needs to be strong. I'll do my best, I whispered to my daughter, who was finally falling asleep despite being fussy. The next day, when I returned home, my mother-in-law and husband were there. Did you really stay here last night with everything in such a mess? The living room was somewhat tidied up for them to sit, but it looked no different from the day before. I had checked the other rooms with the police, and it seemed like things had been thrown out of storage in all of them. The mess was everywhere. Despite always complaining about my cleaning, my mother-in-law had stayed in the house in that condition, and she hadn't lifted a finger to clean up. She just sat there, looking unhappy. What do you mean? Did you really? I felt sorry for Brian, who was abandoned by his wife, so I couldn't go home. Her words hit me, and I responded, it's not that I left. It's that you didn't listen to what I was saying. What? How dare you speak like that? My mother-in-law's face quickly turned angry. Brian jumped in and stopped making a big deal out of the burglary. Have you calmed down now? He said it in a way that irritated me, and something inside me snapped. You're right. It's not like we were burgled, huh? I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. But Brian didn't react to my anger. He just smirked a little. Finally realized it, huh? Yeah, you were overreacting about the burglary. Anyway, start cleaning up, Brian said as if it was someone else's problem. And my mother-in-law looked smug. Cleaning and taking care of the house are a wife's duties, aren't they? My mother-in-law said this in a sickeningly sweet tone, as if talking to a pet. What? I'm not cleaning up. It's your mess, so you should clean it, I said, feeling belittled by them. What? How dare you? As expected, they didn't like my response. You're such a terrible wife. Get to work. My mother-in-law snapped at me, clearly annoyed. What a hassle, my husband grumbled in agreement. I handed them the divorce papers I had prepared and filled out first thing in the morning. I want a divorce, I said firmly. My husband blinked, looking surprised. That's right. I want a divorce right now, I declared firmly. In that instant, my mother-in-law grabbed the divorce papers and melodramatically lamented, oh, poor Brian, being treated like this is so awful, as she hugged my husband's head. Such a big baby, aren't you? I'd have tried to bite my tongue, but my true feelings slipped out. What did you just say, Melissa? The two of them were so furious they seemed ready to explode, but I wasn't going to back down. Did you not hear me? Or are you pretending not to understand, Brian? Divorce. Sign the papers now. I knew it was petty. I knew I shouldn't stoop to their level, but I didn't care at that point. Stop joking around and apologize. Enraged, they pushed me to the ground, pinning me down. Apologize now. Brian's strength made it difficult to breathe, and tears filled my eyes. Melissa, let go of my daughter right now. My saviors were my parents rushing to my rescue. Behind them, I saw the friendly officer from the previous day, coughing and struggling for air. Relief washed over me, and my strength waned. Why are you barging in here like this? Leave immediately. My mother-in-law and husband were being held back by the officer, squirming and resisting. It's useless. You've been caught assaulting someone. With my father's help, I stood up and smiled at the two struggling figures. Actually, I just asked the officer to come and check on the situation from yesterday. I never expected you to attack me. What? What's happening? My husband growled, but I wasn't afraid anymore. We have a baby monitor camera installed in this house for our little Lisa. It's a live stream camera. It couldn't record the person who trashed the room, but as I spoke, both of them visibly relaxed. Huh. So what if it's a live camera? I told you, right? Now, the kind neighbor who helped us yesterday is watching over this room. They listened to your conversation yesterday, along with a lot of people at the police station. My parents were watching too. Yes, after my mother-in-law and husband disappeared behind the door yesterday, I started checking the baby monitor camera. The police suspected that this whole break-in thing seemed fishy, perhaps even staged. Not just my mother-in-law, but my husband too might be involved, I explained. They guessed right. When I came home, the room was all messy, and you both acted surprised, blaming me for it. You planned to make my parents apologize by saying they didn't want a daughter-in-law who'd do something like that. But you didn't want a daughter-in-law at all because we had a baby girl, not a boy. You wanted to replace me with someone else, right? And what's this about an affair approved by the mother-in-law? I said it all quickly, and everyone looked at them coldly. It must be a mistake, my husband said nervously. No way. I would never cheat. Melissa, do you still have more to say? This nonsense. Stop. My mother-in-law, who forgot herself for a moment and got angry, wasn't forgiven by the others. I also refused to accept being judged on such an unfair basis. I don't want a family that doesn't care about how our baby is doing. It's not right that our neighbor, who's been looking after her, shows more love than my own family since I arrived today. I'm going back to my parents' house. And yes, I'll file for divorce and fight for custody of our daughter. It seems that's what you all wanted. No, wait a minute, not to the police station. I don't want to go. Let go. I don't want to. Both of them caused a scene as the police took them away. Afterward, my mother-in-law and husband became infamous in the neighborhood, and not in a good way. They tried to make things right by offering me a divorce settlement, but it didn't help. The rumors had already spread. No matter how much they insisted they paid me, no one believed them. I returned to my parents' house and am raising my daughter with their help. Through a friend's recommendation, I found a job nearby. It's not easy, and I have my worries, but when I see my daughter's smiling face, I feel determined to do my best. I'll work hard to raise Lisa well, making sure she doesn't turn out like her father.
From this moment onward, consider this space ours. Outsiders, hit the road. Hold up, what's the deal here? What's got both of you fired up? Right after my mother's funeral, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law launched into a relentless tirade against me. My husband tried to intervene, but they kept on going. You're being deceived. Maybe someone's got you under a spell, they jeered. Yep, it's all because your mom coddled you. She's the one who molded you into this. It's all on her. When they started disrespecting my late mother, I snapped. I can handle them trash-talking me, but I won't stand for it when it comes to my mom. I'm Kathy, 35 years young. My husband David, just a tad older, and I crossed paths at work and tied the knot 5 years back. We used to share our space with my mom, creating quite the dynamic household. Looking back, these past 5 years have been a whirlwind. It all started at my dad's real estate firm half a decade ago. With a knack for understanding the ebb and flow of both people and money, I pursued economics in college and applied that know-how to my career. Yet, amidst my strides, there were whispers. Some attributed my success solely to my parentage, dubbing me the boss's daughter instead of acknowledging me by name. And then there was David, the golden boy of sales in the same company, drawing attention from all corners, leaving me on the receiving end of more than a few icy glares. Don't get me wrong, I'm not naive enough to claim all my achievements as solely my own. It's the collective effort of those around me. Still, it grated on me, being boxed in as just the boss's daughter. These trying times, my father passed away. With my brother stepping into his shoes as president, the disdainful glances directed at me only grew sharper. Must have botched something up if your brother's taking the reins now. Guess we'll just call you the president's sister, huh? Normally, I might have brushed it off, but in the wake of my father's funeral, those words cut deep. Mentally exhausted, I found myself grappling with a singular question: what do I truly desire? Even as I tried to soldier on, I felt a void, a lack of inspiration. And then, almost impulsively, I uttered those fateful words to my husband David: I want to be an investor. Instead of dismissing my seemingly outrageous aspiration, he stood by me, offering his unwavering support. When I confessed to my mom my desire to quit my job and delve into investing, her response stunned. You should have pursued what you love from the start, without fretting over your father. Despite the rawness of my father's passing, her words felt like a wake-up call. Previously consumed by the negatives, her smile ignited a newfound resolve within me, one that cared little for the opinions of others. Amidst the chaos of funerals, estate settlements, relocations, and a whirlwind of tasks, I embarked on my journey as an investor. It wasn't all smooth sailing from the get-go, but with the unwavering support of my calm and cheerful husband and my mother's encouraging presence, I pressed on. With a combination of my savings and my father's inheritance, my investments began to bear fruit. Over the years, my income soared far beyond what I earned at my previous job, leading to a deeply fulfilling life. Yet amidst this joy, two shadows loomed large: my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, constant sources of concern. My sister-in-law, 3 years senior to my husband and 4 to me, remains unmarried. Since David and I decided to tie the knot, her demeanor suggested she wasn't exactly thrilled. Even my mother-in-law seemed to view me as nothing more than a privileged daddy's girl, despite my equal footing in the workforce. Despite my father's CEO status, each visit to my in-laws was met with snide remarks. Being the coddled princess, I bet you're useless at housework. It's a woman's duty, you know. Spare David the trouble. Mother-in-law, my own mother taught me well, so I'm quite capable. Besides, with both of us working, David and I share responsibilities. It was his suggestion, actually. But my mother-in-law wouldn't hear of it. Even my sister-in-law couldn't contain her frustration in my presence, insisting it's absurd for a woman to marry yet make her husband do chores. After my father-in-law's passing, my relationship with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law took a nosedive. Must be nice, living off David's earnings and lazing about at home. I'm dealing with so much since my husband's gone. How come you get to live so carefree, Kathy? Mother-in-law, as I've explained before, I earn my keep as an investor. I'm far from idling. If you're truly struggling, I'd suggest finding a way to manage your own finances. Besides, having kids isn't the sole measure of a woman's worth. With my father-in-law's demise, my mother-in-law's fixation on money intensified. She seemed resentful of my perceived ease, despite my commitment to my work as an investor. Yet I wasn't inclined to hand over any cash. Every visit to the in-laws revealed more lavish purchases, making it clear where any allowance would end up. I loved David, a man of unwavering trust, and I chose to shield him from the truth about his family. There came a moment when I found solace in confiding in my own mother. Why can't I conceive? The weight of uncertainty as I approached 35, coupled with incessant inquiries from my mother-in-law about when will you start a family, became overwhelming. Her hurtful words labeling me as useless echoed in my mind, and I couldn't contain my frustration. So I poured out my heart to my mother, seeking understanding. Well, I had you when I was 35, so there's no need to worry. Timing is in God's hands, dear. He'll guide us when the time is right. Her comforting words lifted a burden from my soul. From then on, even amidst my mother-in-law's persistent mentions of children, I found reassurance. Children, after all, are a precious blessing. After enduring 5 tumultuous years, a sense of calm finally settled in. Then, unexpectedly, my world was rocked once more by the sudden passing of my mother. Struck by a subarachnoid hemorrhage, she, my guiding light, slipped away, leaving me engulfed in sorrow. David, my steadfast companion through years of shared life, seemed equally shaken. Despite his kindness and support, the funeral arrived before we could fully grasp the void left by my mother's absence. As mourners gathered to bid farewell to my mother, a former executive at the company my brother now led, among them stood my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. It appeared they had chosen a moment when David was absent. "No need for you to be here, Dolan," my mother-in-law remarked curtly, offering no condolences. They proceeded to sign the register, leaving me stunned by their callousness. Yet, upon David's return, their demeanor shifted instantly. "You might be struggling, but Kathy's shock is likely even greater. You need to be there for her," they'd insist, seemingly mindful of my emotions. Later, as exhaustion from the whirlwind of recent days weighed heavily on me, the doorbell pierced the quiet of our home. My husband, ever considerate, answered it, assuming my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had come to offer support. Without a moment's hesitation, he ushered them inside. As they entered the living room, their glances towards me twisted into unpleasant smirks, and then came words I never expected. "From today onwards, this is our domain. Outsiders need to leave, Mom," David exclaimed, his surprise evident. My mother-in-law's words poured forth unabated. "Until now, we've tolerated your presence because your mom was here, but now, only jobless Kathy remains. If you let yourself be leached by such a woman, you'll ruin yourself. We'll move in with you, so you need to divorce Kathy." "Mom, what are you saying? Especially now, and what do you mean by jobless?" "I've explained countless times that Kathy is an investor. When you say investor, it sounds like she has a real job, but let's be honest, isn't she just dabbling in stocks? How can such a woman be a wife? You could do so much better." "Wait a second, what's all this about bad-mouthing Kathy? What exactly are you two insinuating?" "Kathy earns her own keep. Don't belittle her efforts. You're the ones being missiled. You've been under Kathy's mom's influence all this time. Haven't you been brainwashed?" "That's right. Kathy's turned out this way because her mom spoiled her. I can see why David defends her. It's her mom's fault for raising her like this." As my sister-in-law and mother-in-law continued their disparagement of my mom, my simmering anger finally boiled over. I could endure their insults directed at me, but I refused to tolerate any disrespect towards my mom. "Stop tarnishing the memory of my late mother," I seethed, glaring at them. Yet they both grinned smugly, showing no hint of remorse. "Fine, fine, we get it. You don't want us talking about your mom, huh? Now that the mom who always sided with you and allowed you to be a recluse is gone, it must be tough to face the truth." My fists clenched, trembling with suppressed rage. Taking a deep breath to rein in my emotions, I prepared to fire back, but before I could speak, it was David who stepped in. "That's enough, Mom. Stop speaking ill of Kathy," David interjected firmly, addressing both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. "Kathy isn't a recluse, she's a legitimate investor. My mother-in-law and I have been supporting Kathy's endeavors from the start. If Kathy were just fooling around, neither of us would have stood for it." Even my mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and I couldn't conceal our surprise at David's uncharacteristically stern tone. My mother-in-law seemed taken aback, scrambling to offer excuses. "Don't be so upset. Nevertheless, Kathy's lifestyle thus far has been sustained by your income, hasn't it? You've provided her with a privileged life, even buying her this lavish condo. Poor David. If you move in with us, we'll take care of all the household chores. Just give us a small allowance. That's all we need. Isn't that right, Mom?" My mother-in-law's words were cut short by David's flustered voice. "This apartment belongs to Kathy." "What?" My mother-in-law's incredulous cry filled the room, her surprise impossible to conceal. She scrutinized David with wide eyes, as if seeking confirmation. "This apartment belongs to Kathy." "When did this happen? I never agreed to that. This apartment was part of my father-in-law's legacy, and Kathy inherited it. That's why the title is in her name. Besides, we split the living expenses evenly. I don't understand what you're insinuating, but Kathy earns more than I do." Both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were taken aback by David's revelation. It was understandable. They couldn't have fathomed that I earned more than him. My mother-in-law's energy waned at David's words, leaving her looking like a deflated balloon. Taking the reins from her, my sister-in-law spoke up. "That's impossible. Do investors really make that much? Just by trading stocks as an individual? I can't speak for other investors, but perhaps Kathy has a knack for it. Regardless, the facts remain. How dare you undermine my beloved wife? This is our home. Stop kidding around, both of you. Leave now." Upon hearing David's words, my sister-in-law spiraled into panic. "What? Hold on. We came here expecting to move in today." What? Now it was my turn, along with my husband, to exclaim in surprise. You sold our house. Why the sudden decision? You could have at least discussed it with me. We, we thought we could stay here. And we were strapped for cash. I quit my job, assuming you'd support us. If you don't let us stay, we'll be in serious trouble. Mom, please say something. With pleading eyes fixed on David, my sister-in-law shook her mother, who seemed frozen in shock. But the magnitude of the situation left my mother-in-law in a daze. My sister-in-law, her confidence shattered, now clung to me for support. Hey, Kathy, I'm sorry. Please talk to David for me. We can't go on like this. You mentioned you sold your house, so you must have some money saved up, right? I spoke coolly to my clinging sister-in-law, prompting her to lash out at me. Don't act clever. Just because your investments turned out well, don't think you're above everyone else. Know your place. Enough is enough. David's voice boomed, drowning out even my sister-in-law's protests. He fixed a piercing stare on her as she fell silent. Forget about the house. I won't even demand my share. Just leave right now. With that, my husband practically escorted his mother and sister out, firmly locking the door behind them. For a while, we could hear the persistent ringing of the doorbell and pounding on the door, but eventually the noise faded into silence. After that ordeal, word from relatives had it that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had secured a modest apartment to rent and were now living together. Their old family home, nestled in a remote area, didn't fetch much on the market, given its location and the value of the land. My sister-in-law struggled to land a decent job, and their funds quickly dwindled. Despite their repeated attempts to rely on David and me, we firmly shut the door each time. They resorted to selling off their designer possessions and now reportedly scrape by with part-time jobs, working tirelessly from dawn till dusk. Meanwhile, I've enjoyed the freedom that comes with being an investor, no longer subjected to hurtful remarks. And as my late mother had foretold, we're preparing to welcome a new member into our family next year. Once again, I'm grateful for her timely blessings.
Hi, I'm Mei Ling, and I'm 29 years old. Growing up Asian American has its challenges, especially being Chinese American like me. I've faced some unfair treatment because of my background. I've learned to stand up for myself and not let discrimination bring me down. Life has taught me to be tough, so I can handle whatever comes my way. But sometimes people can still surprise me with their ignorance. Take my father-in-law, for example. He doesn't seem to understand how tough it can be to be different in America. Let me tell you about my family. My husband, Mateo, is from the Dominican Republic, and I'm Chinese American. We love exploring each other's cultures and traditions. Recently, Mateo's stepdad, Hiroshi, joined our family. He's also from East Asia like me, which I thought was cool. I was excited to have someone who understood my background. But things changed when Hiroshi came into our lives. Mateo and his mom, Sofia, started speaking more Spanish, especially when Hiroshi was around. At first, I didn't think much of it since Spanish is their first language. Plus, they weren't saying anything bad. I know because I speak Spanish too. You know, I want to surprise my husband by learning Spanish. He really appreciates it when people do things for him, so I thought learning his language would make us closer. I kept it a secret for longer than I planned because I was afraid to tell them I could understand what they were saying. Even though I was getting better at Spanish, I was still scared of making mistakes and embarrassing myself. Maybe my fear was a good thing because when Hiroshi came into the picture, Sofia and Mateo started speaking Spanish more often. I thought it was best not to speak Spanish during those times. I mean, imagine joining a family with different cultures and feeling left out by everyone. Out of respect for Hiroshi and because we both shared East Asian backgrounds, I kept talking to him in English. I found it a bit strange that they were speaking Spanish more, but I didn't think much of it. That is, until I started hearing insults in Spanish that really surprised me. I remember that day vividly, like it just happened. We were all gathered around the table, ready to enjoy a meal together. The food smelled amazing, and we were chatting happily. But then disaster struck. I accidentally spilled gravy everywhere when I reached for the gravy boat. It was like a river of regret flowing across the table. You can imagine the chaos that followed. Sofia, my mother-in-law, started swearing in Spanish. Even though I'm not fluent in Spanish, I could tell she was saying mean things about me. It hurt, but Mateo, my husband, stood up for me. He told his mom that her insults weren't okay. Then Sofia said something that broke my heart. She asked Mateo why he was defending me when she thought I couldn't understand what she was saying anyway. Those words hit me hard. It hurt even more than her insults earlier. I felt so embarrassed and shocked that she would say something like that. It felt like she was used to talking about me behind my back in her language. I choked on my water, feeling overwhelmed. But Hiroshi, my father-in-law, comforted me. He reminded me that everyone makes mistakes and accidents happen. He even said there was more gravy in the pot, trying to lighten the mood. Hiroshi didn't know that it wasn't the spilled gravy that left me breathless. It was Sophia's hurtful words questioning my worth. I couldn't shake off the doubt that crept into my mind. Did I hear her correctly? Was I losing touch with reality? I couldn't believe that my own mother-in-law, who should have been supportive, would speak about me like that. After dinner, haunted by Sophia's words, I needed confirmation. I asked a Spanish-speaking friend and even used Google Translate. Unfortunately, my fears were true. Sophia had intentionally been rude and disrespectful. I couldn't understand why she felt that way about me. I kept my discoveries to myself for now, deciding to watch our family dynamics and wait for the right time to address this. The next morning, as we sat at the breakfast table, there was an awkward silence. I sat quietly, thinking hard, while the others chatted as usual. Sophia and Mateo started speaking in Spanish, unaware of the impact their words had. Suddenly, Sophia said something shocking. "I regret marrying this old, stupid man," Sophia said, unaware that I understood her words. My heart sank as I heard her. Once again, Sophia had revealed her true feelings, ruining our mealtime harmony. Meanwhile, Hiroshi chuckled and said, "I should learn Spanish so I can understand what you two are always talking about." If only he knew the painful truth behind their laughter. Sophia and Mateo pretended it was all harmless teasing, hiding the hurtful gossip they were sharing right in front of him. But the gossip didn't stop there. Mateo and Sophia continued, each comment more hurtful than the last. Let me give you some examples. They mocked Hiroshi's accent, mimicking his attempts to pronounce certain words. They laughed at his cultural traditions, saying they were strange or unnecessary. And they made jokes about his age, saying he was past his prime. As I sat there, I felt more and more uncomfortable. It was like watching a cruel game where Hiroshi was the target of their teasing without even knowing it. My heart hurt for him, knowing he was being hurt by his own family. This wasn't the love and acceptance I hoped for when our cultures came together. In that moment, I promised myself I wouldn't stay silent anymore. Sophia might have said hurtful things about me, but I wouldn't let her treat this kind old man the same way. I knew I had to address the tension in our family to make them see the value of our diverse backgrounds and the importance of treating each other with kindness. As time passed, I became more determined to expose Mateo and Sophia's unkind treatment of Hiroshi. Armed with my phone, I started recording their hurtful conversations during meals. I wanted to show them their behavior and its impact. With each meal, I discreetly captured their words, knowing they would reveal the truth. As their insults grew harsher, Hiroshi started to notice something was wrong. He and I were constantly left out, and it was clear something needed to change. As Hiroshi felt more excluded, his lively spirit dimmed. I tried to guide our conversations in English to include everyone, but Mateo and Sophia always switched back to Spanish, shutting us out. Their gossip and insults towards Hiroshi ruined the atmosphere at meals. When I listened to the recordings, I realized something heartbreaking. Sophia had married Hiroshi for his money, regretting that she couldn't inherit his fortune until he passed away. I was shocked by her greed, and Mateo, my husband, not only joined in the insults but found them funny, supporting his mother's awful intentions. The realization hit me hard. How could I have missed their true colors? These were the people I trusted to embrace and celebrate our diverse family, yet they have betrayed that trust. I knew I had to do something, not just for Hiroshi's sake, but for the respect and love our family deserved. Late into the night, I listened to those recordings, steeling myself to confront Mateo and Sophia with the evidence of their cruelty. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I couldn't let them continue hurting us. As I planned my approach, I promised myself I wouldn't let their toxicity ruin our lives any longer. Hiroshi deserved better, and so did our family. Determined to make a change, I geared up to confront Mateo and Sophia about their hurtful actions. But before I faced them, I knew one thing. Hiroshi needed to hear the truth first. He deserved to know. Gathering my courage, I approached Hiroshi, sensing his heavy heart. With a comforting smile, I asked, "Hey Hiroshi, how are you holding up?" He sighed and met my gaze, his vulnerability clear. Mei Ling, it's been tough, honestly. I'm having a hard time fitting into this new family setup. The constant use of Spanish makes me feel left out, like I don't belong. Maybe I should consider those Spanish classes after all. Understanding his struggle, I nodded sympathetically. I hear you, Hiroshi. It's been bothering me too. But there's something important I need to tell you. He looked intrigued, curious about what I had to say. What's on your mind, Mei Ling? Taking a deep breath, I confessed the secret I've been keeping. Hiroshi, I understand Spanish. I've been following every conversation Mateo and Sofia have had. They didn't know because I never joined in on the Spanish talks. I kept it to myself because I felt nervous and embarrassed about my language skills, but I do understand them completely. Hiroshi looked surprised. Why didn't he tell them? I'm sure they would have helped you with your Spanish. I smiled sadly. You're probably right, Hiroshi. I was just nervous and embarrassed. I wanted to surprise Mateo once I learned enough Spanish to have a real conversation, but I kept delaying it, worried he wouldn't be impressed. Still, maybe it's a good thing I didn't tell them. Why do you say that? By keeping this secret, I was able to hear their conversations, and what I heard wasn't good. They had been talking about you behind your back, saying hurtful things. The language barrier protected them, but now they'll have to face the consequences. Hiroshi looked confused and concerned. What do you mean? What have they been saying about me? I took his hands in mine, speaking firmly. Hiroshi, they've been making fun of you, mocking you, and saying mean things about you. It's been happening for weeks, and it's terrible that they can talk about you like that. His eyes showed a mix of surprise, hurt, and gratitude. I don't know what to say. Thank you for telling me the truth. I never thought they would do something like this. What exactly have they been saying? He asked, bracing himself for the harsh reality. Hiroshi, I know this is hard to hear, but I have to be honest with you. Sophia married you for your money, and both she and Mateo are waiting for you to pass away so they can inherit your fortune. As my words sank in, Hiroshi's disbelief turned into shock and confusion. No, Mei Ling, that can't be true. Sophia loves me, and Mateo loves me too. They wouldn't do that. Are you sure you're being honest with me? Maybe it's you who's trying to deceive me. With determination, I assured him, Hiroshi, I wouldn't bring this up without evidence. I recorded their conversations, and you can hear it for yourself. Ask any Spanish-speaking person you know to confirm what they're saying. I then airdropped the recordings to Hiroshi's phone, letting him uncover the truth for himself. Days passed, and the tension between Hiroshi, Sophia, and Mateo grew thicker. I gave Hiroshi space to process everything. Then, one day, he pulled me aside, his face showing a mix of acceptance and gratitude. I owe you an apology. I doubted you, blinded by my love for Sophia. But after talking to my Spanish-speaking friends and listening to those recordings, I believe you. I can't believe they said such awful things about me. What did I do to deserve this? I know, Hiroshi, it's a lot to take in, and I'm sorry, but I felt you needed to know the truth. I've decided to get an annulment. I'm old, May. I can't waste time with people who don't care about me. It's just hard to believe you'll be leaving so soon. Leaving sounds like the right move. I think you should do it. This will be my last night here. Tomorrow, I'll go and won't contact Sophia and Mateo until I'm ready to start the annulment process. But for now, I think I need a break. You deserve real love and peace, Hiroshi, and so do I. With that, Hiroshi and I hugged, and then we both went our separate ways. The next day, just as he said, Hiroshi was gone. He packed his things and left, leaving Sophia and Mateo confused and free to keep talking badly about him. As I put away the dishes, I could hear Sophia and Mateo in the nearby living room. Their insults towards Hiroshi made me furious. Why were they being so cruel? Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. With a surge of confidence, I decided to confront them about their hurtful behavior. Enough was enough. I know exactly what you've been saying about Hiroshi in your secret Spanish conversations, I said firmly. Sophia's face went pale, and she looked shocked. Mateo tried to act innocent. You don't know what you're talking about, he insisted. At that moment, I unleashed a side of me they had never seen before. Speaking fluent Spanish, I confronted them directly. Don't underestimate me. I've understood everything you two have been saying for the past 3 weeks. You've been insulting and disrespecting Hiroshi since he entered our lives. Mateo looked embarrassed, avoiding eye contact. They were caught in their lies. Finally, Mateo spoke up, his voice filled with curiosity, regret, and perhaps even hurt. Why didn't you tell me you could speak Spanish? You're really good. I gave a bitter smile. I was embarrassed by my imperfect Spanish, but now I see that it helped me uncover the truth about your true intentions towards Hiroshi. Their eyes widened in shock, struggling to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Sophia's voice shook as she asked, "What do you mean, Mei Ling?" I took a deep breath, revealing the truth bit by bit. I've told Hiroshi everything. He's on vacation now, away from this toxic environment. And because of what he's learned, he's going to pursue an annulment. So you won't get the money. Confusion and panic filled the room as Sophia and Mateo realized the consequences of their actions. The realization that their pursuit of Hiroshi's wealth had been fruitless left them stunned. You see, Sophia and Mateo, greed and manipulation may have clouded your judgment temporarily. But in the end, the truth won out. Hiroshi's fortune will never be yours. Your betrayal shattered his love and trust. As the reality of their actions sank in, Sophia and Mateo faced the consequences of their greed and deceit. The facade they had built around Hiroshi crumbled, and their dreams of an easy fortune vanished. In that moment, I stood firm, knowing I had spoken up for what was right, even if it strained our family's fragile harmony. Unfortunately, the damage had been done, and tension lingered between Mateo, Sophia, and me. Realizing the toxicity of the situation, I knew I couldn't stay any longer. If they could treat Hiroshi like that, who knows what they said about me? Their true colors had been exposed, and I couldn't ignore the toxicity in our relationship. Quietly, I started planning my exit. I reached out to Hiroshi for guidance and support. He, being the kind soul he was, encouraged me and even offered financial help to start anew. He knew I deserved better than the toxic environment we were in. I waited for the right moment to tell them I was leaving. The tension in the house was thick, with Mateo and Sophia carrying the weight of their failed scheme. They were angry and resentful, hiding any remorse they might have felt. With my preparations complete, I gathered the courage to make a clean break. The perfect moment came, and with my bags packed and determination in my heart, I faced Mateo and Sophia. I calmly told them that their actions had destroyed the trust and love between us. Staying in such a toxic environment would only hurt us more. Their faces twisted with anger and regret as they realized the consequences of their behavior. In that moment, I made my decision to leave. Standing tall, I asserted my worth and declared my independence. Their attempts to persuade me otherwise were futile. I had made up my mind, and nothing could change it. With a final farewell, I walked away from the toxicity that had plagued our lives, stepping into a new chapter. As I journeyed towards self-discovery and freedom, I carried the lessons learned with me. No longer would I be confined by others' expectations and judgments. I had found my voice and would use it to shape my destiny, leaving behind the negativity that once consumed me. It was time to embrace my strength and forge a path true to myself.
Our establishment caters exclusively to celebrities. If you're not affluent, we kindly ask that you refrain from visiting. Please vacate the premises, the manager asserted with little emotion. The following day, I couldn't shake the lingering sense of prejudice toward appearances prevalent in five-star accommodations. Yet the manager remained oblivious. He failed to grasp the influence wielded by my in-laws and the discontent he would face in the days to come. I'm Maria, 32, a homemaker without children. Stephen, my husband, and I crossed paths during my part-time stint at a supermarket. His serene and refined demeanor convinced me of his inherent decency early in our courtship. However, my astonishment peaked during a visit to his parents' abode for wedding discussions. The residence resembled more of a sprawling campus than a home, complete with imposing gates and towering walls that concealed its entirety from view. Beyond the gate, an unexpected spectacle greeted me. At the far end of the lengthy stone pathway stood a breathtaking country estate, reminiscent of a lavish villa. A meticulously maintained garden sprawled beside the grand structure, suggesting the handiwork of a skilled gardener. My eyes widened further as I caught sight of what seemed to be a pristine swimming pool and tennis courts nestled beyond. A wave of disbelief washed over me as I questioned the purpose of my visit. Stephen's dual role as a college student and part-time convenience store worker was indeed remarkable. How he managed such a balancing act puzzled me. According to Stephen, his family tree boasted a lineage of corporate titans, his father, mother, sister, and himself all holding esteemed positions as presidents of top companies. Unlike some celebrities who inherit family enterprises, Stephen's family forged their own paths as accomplished entrepreneurs. Following suit, Stephen treated the same path, utilizing his part-time earnings to cover tuition costs and kickstarting his own entrepreneurial venture. It was through this unique circumstance that our paths crossed, and now he tirelessly endeavors to expand his fledgling business. In my family, my father holds a regular job at a company, my mother is a homemaker, and my brother follows suit with his own corporate career. Doubts crept in, making me ponder whether I could truly fit into Stephen's world as his wife. However, Stephen remained unperturbed. What drew me to you was your warmth and joy. You're the one I envisioned sharing my life with, he reassured me. I made the decision to place my trust in Stephen and stand by his side. Yet concerns loomed regarding my prospective in-laws. Would they view me, a commoner, as an adequate match for their son? Anxiety gnawed at my heart, fearing I might disappoint them. However, upon meeting Stephen's family, my apprehensions melted away. They embraced me with genuine warmth and hospitality, expressing delight that Stephen had finally brought a woman home. My father-in-law, in particular, seemed to take a liking to me. Maria, you possess a rare beauty, inside and out. Your upbringing shines through in your demeanor. Stephen's choice is impeccable, my mother-in-law praised. Both my mother-in-law and sister-in-law exuded warmth and kindness, and by the time our visit concluded, we had formed a genuine bond, evolving into good friends. Likewise, my own parents found solace in Stephen's gentle and composed nature, swiftly granting their blessing for our union. With their approval secured, our marriage proceeded seamlessly. As Stephen embarked on his entrepreneurial journey, he expressed his desire for me to leave my job and embrace the role of a full-time homemaker to support him. We settled into an apartment close to my in-laws' residence, relishing the early days of our marriage. Occasionally, we'd gather for dinner parties and barbecues at my in-laws, who, despite their hectic schedules, embrace Annie, our live-in nanny, as part of the family. Witnessing their genuine kindness left a lasting impression on me, reassuring me that I could be myself without feeling intimidated by their celebrity status. As 3 months elapsed since our nuptials, we decided to host a grand celebration for my father-in-law's 60th birthday. Wanting to reciprocate the care and hospitality shown to us during our wedding, Stephen and I took charge of arranging the festivities. With Stephen preoccupied with work, the responsibility fell on my shoulders, a decision we reached after discussing it together. Your father adores you, Maria, so you have the freedom to choose. I believe he'll be happy anywhere and with anything, Stephen assured me. Accepting that I had the liberty to make my own decisions proved to be the most challenging aspect. Seeking guidance, I confided in a friend who suggested opting for a top-tier hotel, especially since my father held such esteemed status. Following her advice, I discovered a luxurious 5-star hotel conveniently located near my parents' residence. Despite my lack of experience with upscale accommodations, I assumed it would meet the standards. Nevertheless, I resolved to visit and judge for myself. I opted to visit the hotel first, feeling a bit apprehensive about going alone. To ease my nerves, I invited my best friend from high school to join me. Upon making a reservation for lunch, I was immediately struck by the restaurant's impeccable and gracious service. Clear signs of a 5-star establishment, I thought. Dressed in a smart and elegant ensemble, a white blouse paired with a sleek black skirt and pumps, I felt ready to step into the realm of luxury. My friend, too, looked lovely in her floral dress and stylish heeled boots. As we made our way to the hotel, excitement bubbled within me, akin to the anticipation of embarking on a thrilling journey. Little did I know, the experience awaiting us would exceed all expectations. I drove to the hotel in my trusty car, a faithful companion since my single days, and followed the directions to the parking lot situated at the roundabout near the entrance. The attendant who guided me was exceptionally courteous and helpful. However, as I stepped into the lobby, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. A sharply dressed man caught my attention. His stern gaze seemed to pierce through me. Though he bore the demeanor of a hotel staff member, neither my friend nor I recognized him. His impeccable suit and poised posture exuded an air of authority. I couldn't fathom why he was scrutinizing us so intently. Descending into the underground parking lot, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of self-consciousness as my modest car stood amidst the lineup of sleek black luxury vehicles. Observing some guests being chauffeured in with doors ceremoniously opened for them only added to my unease. Tempted to hail a cab, I hesitated, knowing it would only delay my arrival when I was already so close to home. As my friend and I entered the hotel, the individual who had been observing us approached. "You seem a bit out of place here. Can I be of assistance?" he asked, his tone polite yet carrying a hint of condescension that didn't sit well with me. "I have a lunch reservation here." "What do you mean by unsuitable for the hotel?" I questioned, feeling a surge of indignation. The taller man continued, his gaze directed down at me. "Your choice of vehicle and attire don't quite align with the usual clientele of this establishment," he remarked, punctuating his statement with a laugh. My cheeks flushed with embarrassment, appalled by his snobbish demeanor. Unable to meet his gaze, my friend averted her eyes. Despite feeling the sting of embarrassment, I refused to let it drive me away. Though typically reserved, I possess a resilient spirit, and I was determined to confront the individual responsible for these disparaging remarks. I needed to know who dared to speak about me in such a derogatory manner. "Are you a member of the hotel staff?" I inquired sharply, my eyes fixed on him. "I happen to be the manager of this establishment," came his haughty reply. Privately, I couldn't help but find his emphasis on the hotel's prestigious rating rather absurd, though I chose to keep this observation to myself. His response only served to aggravate me further. "Does this hotel judge its patrons based on their cars and appearance, adjusting its treatment accordingly?" I challenged, refusing to back down. The manager's disdainful sniff and snort in response only fueled my determination. "The clientele should align with the hotel's esteemed reputation. Maintaining that standard ensures guests feel comfortable and at ease," he asserted. His words grated on my nerves. "Are you implying that we're somehow tarnishing the reputation of your establishment?" I retorted, feeling my irritation mounting. The manager clicked his tongue disapprovingly. I couldn't help but feel sorry for my friend, who I had invited along. The thought of canceling our reservation and leaving crossed my mind. Just as I was considering our next move, an elderly hotel staff member approached me and politely inquired, "Ma'am?" Upon learning of my lunch reservation, he respectfully acknowledged the manager with a bow and said, "Allow me to escort you to the restaurant." With a sense of relief, I followed him to our destination, noticing the manager's lingering bitter glare. Unlike the manager's demeanor, the hotel employee who guided us was courteous and welcoming. "You've traveled quite a distance, and I apologize for any discomfort you may have experienced. We're renowned for our exquisite cuisine, and I trust you'll have a delightful stay," the young manager offered apologetically. I couldn't help but wonder how such a youthful figure found himself at the helm of such a prestigious establishment. He explained that the hotel's previous owner had retired, passing the reins to his younger brother, with his son assuming the role of manager. Despite his impressive academic background from a top-tier university, the manager lacked prior experience in hospitality and struggled to uphold the hotel's esteemed standards. "It's disheartening to witness even long-standing patrons being overlooked and compelled to depart over minor matters," the elderly employee lamented solemnly. "I've dedicated my life to this hotel, only to find myself deemed expendable in its quest for rejuvenation. I'll be bidding farewell at the month's end. It seems the hotel no longer values the loyalty of its devoted staff, instrumental in achieving its coveted 5-star status." As the elderly hotelier had assured, the cuisine surpassed all expectations, leaving my palate thoroughly satisfied. The head chef, who greeted us personally, exuded skill and experience, his age mirroring that of the hotelier. Yet a nagging concern lingered: would he too fall victim to the hotel's restructuring? "People find joy in satiation," I remarked to my best friend as we exited the restaurant, our faces radiant with contentment. Just as we prepared to depart, the manager approached us once more. "I eagerly anticipate your return to our restaurant," he remarked, his persistence unwavering. Though our decision to leave remained unchanged, the manager's resolve remained steadfast. "I'm sorry, but individuals like yourself detract from the dignity of this establishment. This is a hotel frequented by celebrities, not suitable for those of lesser means. Kindly vacate the premises immediately," the manager declared bluntly, leaving me too stunned to protest. Though the hotel itself was undeniably elegant, the manager's rudeness and discourtesy left a sour taste in my mouth, prompting me to reconsider hosting my father-in-law's birthday celebration there. Surely, there must be a more hospitable venue nearby. When I recounted the incident to my in-laws, they listened intently. However, upon learning the name of the hotel, they exchanged puzzled glances. Why do we visit this hotel? I'm curious to experience such a renowned establishment, my father-in-law suggested. Much to my bewilderment, I couldn't comprehend his eagerness to return to a place where I had encountered such disrespect. Let's dress casually, my father-in-law proposed, urging everyone to do the same. He instructed us to proceed ahead while he would join us later. From the moment we stepped into the roundabout, the manager's piercing gaze never wavered. The lobby was bustling with activity. Guests lounged on plush sofas or sipped coffee, creating an atmosphere akin to a bustling event venue. As we settled onto a sofa beneath a grand chandelier, awaiting my father-in-law's arrival, the manager stormed in, his expression thunderous. You've returned, evidently without learning your lesson. You never seem to grasp it, do you? Arriving in a minivan, utterly disgraceful, he bellowed, his tone dripping with disdain. Undeterred by his haughty demeanor, I countered, We're here to celebrate my father-in-law's birthday. I made a reservation, and there was no mention of vehicle type. What's the issue? Unfazed, the manager continued his tirade. Your attire screams unsophisticated. You belong in one of those seedy roadside inns. He spat, his words drawing shocked glances from the other guests. This hotel should be open to everyone, shouldn't it? We're prepared to pay. It's absurd to judge guests based on arbitrary criteria. Treating guests this way is utterly appalling, I declared, garnering nods of agreement from those nearby. The customer should always come first, shouldn't they? Selecting guests based on appearance is simply unacceptable. The manager, visibly flustered, flushed red, and retorted, We are a luxury establishment. We cater to celebrities. If you're not affluent, kindly depart. In that case, let's all head home, my father-in-law suggested. His words prompted many in the lobby to rise and depart, murmuring their discontent. I won't be returning, and I certainly won't recommend this place to anyone, they vowed as they attempted to leave, prompting a heated exchange with the rushing employees. In reality, the individuals in the lobby were all acquaintances of my father-in-law who had gathered at his behest. His slight delay was due to his efforts in rallying them together. My father-in-law had been a familiar face at the hotel since the days of its previous management. In the early years, he often dropped by in his work attire, yet he was captivated by the hotel's consistent dedication to treating every guest with the utmost respect. His company had a tradition of hosting extravagant parties at the venue annually, becoming deeply intertwined with its history. He introduced the hotel to his family, who also frequented its halls. Given their collective stature as company presidents, the frequency of these gatherings was notable. My mother-in-law utilized the hotel for client entertaining, while my sister-in-law conducted executive training sessions within its walls. Even my husband's company held celebratory events there, underscoring the significance of each family member's company to the hotel's success. Then, a voice broke the tension, begging for forgiveness. To our astonishment, it was none other than the hotel president, the manager's father, kneeling before us. The elderly hotelier, recognizing my father-in-law, had urgently contacted the president. With a profound apology, he chastised his son for his egregious behavior, compelling the manager to kneel alongside him in remorse. I deeply regret the misunderstanding, sir. Had I known your esteemed position, the treatment would have been different. It was inappropriate to base service on financial status. The manager attempted to justify himself, but his excuses fell flat. There's no need for apologies to me. It was my daughter-in-law who was mistreated by your manager, a woman as dear to me as my own daughter. Remember who the hotel truly serves. I have fond memories of your predecessor, but it's time to part ways, my father-in-law asserted firmly, signaling our departure from the five-star establishment. Leaving behind the pretentious atmosphere, we relocated to a beloved diner frequented by my family. With its cozy private rooms and welcoming ambience, the diner was the perfect setting to celebrate my father-in-law's milestone birthday. The delightful food and warm atmosphere brought joy to my in-laws, marking a memorable conclusion to the day. At my father-in-law's suggestion, we extended the celebration to include my parents, transforming the occasion into a lively and joyous affair. My husband and I gladly footed the bill for the party at the familiar diner. It was a modest expense for us, given the casual nature of the establishment. Once again, I reflected on our commitment to remain grounded, refusing to let wealth cloud our values or lead to misconceptions. As time passed, rumors circulated that the manager had been dismissed and demoted to the role of a cleaner. Although the specifics remained uncertain, It was clear that the hotel's reputation had suffered irreparable damage. 2 years later, the once illustrious establishment shuttered its doors for good, a cautionary tale of the consequences of arrogance and elitism. The next time I drove past the hotel, the sight was dismal. The glass windows shattered, furniture stacked haphazardly in front of the entrance, turning it into a desolate wasteland. The legacy of the hotel, once steeped in tradition, lay in ruins, all due to the actions of one misguided individual. Despite my father-in-law's humble upbringing, we share a strong bond, and I cherish the time spent with him, my husband, and the rest of my in-laws. As news of my pregnancy spreads, anticipation fills the air, with everyone eagerly awaiting the arrival of the newest addition to the family.